It is my pleasure to introduce a person that's for the people, by the people, and will do for the people, Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here this evening for so many reasons. But before I say anything, I'd like to thank Eugene Hill for feeding my husband. He was very hungry. He's been working very hard. You know, he's been campaigning with me day in and day out. And so I've got him on a particular kind of diet. And so he's been honoring that diet. And to get here this evening and to receive such wonderful food pleases him and me, keeps him happy, and keeps us speaking to each other. So thank you very, very much for that. Jean Hell, I am so very pleased to attend the Gardena Police Foundation's 2012 5th Annual Awards Dinner. And I want to thank you as chairman of the Police Foundation's Board of Directors, and of course, our Chief of Police, Edward Medrano, for the invitation to join you this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, what Jean Hell did not tell you is, I've been knowing him for over 100 years. I'm 101 and he's 102. But we really have known each other for many, many years. And as I have pursued my career in politics, he has just blossomed in business. Jean Hell is very special and very successful in business because he really learns how systems work. Not only does he learn how systems work, he works the systems. And so whether it is locally, statewide, or in federal government, he knows how to get to the right people. He understands the procurement process, and he understands who's making decisions. And so, while he works certainly with elected officials, he digs deeply inside the departments and the agencies, and he gets to know not only how the system works and who makes the decisions, but how to fashion his response to the request for proposals so that he's able to be successful. Not only that, I've watched him as he's understood the importance of joint ventures. He knows how to join up and team up with businesses who may be in a better position to get that contract, and how they understand that if they have him working with them, that this makes their contract more pleasing and acceptable to those who are looking for certain things. So Jean is very good. As a matter of fact, you should teach a class on how to navigate the system, because that is what he does so very well. He's come to my office many times over the years, but when he comes, it's literally to stop by and say hello. And when I ask him about what he's doing, he's already done the business with the Department of Transportation and others. And I can recall when we had the Democratic National Convention here in Los Angeles, and we were trying to help them to understand how they could make opportunities available to the entire community. I had to call on him, and he had to teach them not only the work he's done with helping companies to have access and acquire heavy equipment and all of that, but how they could truly make the system work for the overall community. So when he talks about business, it's not simply from an intellectual standpoint. It is because he's had hands-on experience. He has grown up with the teachings of, he told me tonight, I didn't really understand. I thought it was his daddy who taught him, but it was his mother. See, women know how to do a lot of things, right? So he's done well, he's been successful, and I'm very pleased that as a father, that not only does he have a son that's in business, but his daughter is in business, learning from him, and will probably take over his business someday. Give him a big round of applause. I want to tell you what a real pleasure it has been representing this city. I consider this a culturally rich and economically viable city. And of course, this city is led by someone who I never expected was going to end up in such partnership with me. I'm sure that when people see the pictures of us together, they're thinking, well, how did that happen? Maxine Waters and Mayor Tanaka, who are partners in, as elected officials working on behalf of the city in ways that people never expected. Thank you, Mayor Tanaka, not only for your leadership in this city, but helping us to show folks that you can work together for both sides of the aisle. Give them a big round of applause. I want to thank all of the members of the City Council. This is a very friendly city, and the members of the City Council here show up at all of the events. Whether or not we're talking about Cinco de Mayo, we're talking about Martin Luther King celebration, whatever it is being put on by the city, the members show up. And I want to tell you, I have danced every year to that Medina's band and his music and all of his blues and rock and roll and everything that he's doing. Thank you for providing the music and being the MC for all of our programs. Give him a big round. I want to thank all of the members again of the City Council because I just recently came through an election. And this election was different because the whole United States of America was reapportioned. That happens every 10 years because we have the one man, one vote concept. And we must make sure that all of the congressional districts are equal. And so we have to draw the lines and take into consideration all of those people who've moved out, those people who died, the new births, and all of that. And so my election and my campaign was quite different this time. Because in addition to all of the cities I've had for quite some time, we've added to that Lenox and Harbor Gateway and North Torrance and Lomita and Harbor City and on and on and on. But if you take a look at the way we campaigned and the way we did our literature, some of the members of the City Council may have been a little bit surprised because on one of my mailers, they were all on there with the mayor on the front presenting me with a plaque at a City Council meeting. And I didn't ask them. I just put them on the front of the plaque. I didn't say they were endorsing. I just simply said they honored me. And it went over very big. Thank you, members of the City Council, for honoring me. And not making a fuss. I'd like to commend the Gardena Police Foundation for organizing this special event, as you have done so proudly for 5 years. And I want to personally thank tonight's awards recipients, South Coast Communities, Developer of the Year, Wells Fargo, Financial Banking Corporation of the Year. Where's Wells Fargo? Who's representing Wells? I want you to tell your CEO that I said something very nice about Wells Fargo. I fuss at you guys all the time. But I want you to know I am not only commending you this evening, but I'm even going to take pictures with you, so that when they can say that I give you too hard a time, you can show them that we got along tonight, okay? Thank you very much. Crenshaw Lumber, Business of the Year, the Gardena Elks Lodge 1919 Community Service Award. Thank you for all that you have done to keep Gardena a safe and thriving community. Now, I'd like to make special mention of the Board of Directors of the Foundation. We're all very thankful that you're giving up your time and your energy to support our police department, because our chief is very special and he's so proud of this city and he's done so many things until he really does deserve the kind of support that the business community is given. And to hear Jean Hale talk about how easy it is to collect money because people thank you and care so much about the leadership and the work that you have done is very special. So, Foundation Board of Directors, thank you, but one special mention. Mo Shimarani loves the police department. And when he brags, not brags, because he doesn't brag, he's a very humble man. He talks about how proud he is to be supportive of the police department and of the foundation. And I want you to know, I hear this because my husband is associated with him and the business. And so we get a chance to talk. And this is one of your biggest supporters. Give him a big round of applause. That South Bay Auto Auction. Good business, operating, doing well in the city. And so you should be proud of him. Well, let me just say this. While many of us are indeed thrilled with this election and re-election of President Barack Obama, along with some of the other notable victories in the Senate and the House of Representatives, Congress and the administration are going to find that we will have to work together in the coming weeks and months to contend with what you've been hearing about, the fiscal cliff, and continue our efforts to rebuild the nation's economy and help put Americans back to work. Given the compromises that will have to be reached for Congress to address the debt and deficit in a bipartisan manner, many programs and grants that cities and local governments rely on may be scaled back. Accordingly, we will probably rely even more heavily on strong, effective, private-public partnerships that promote job training, workforce development, STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and math education, and local priorities. However, I do believe that we can find bipartisan agreement on investments in STEM education as a critical component of our nation's long-term economic health and global competitiveness. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk about STEM because it is the subject that is on the minds of many of the elected officials in the Congress of the United States, and we're bombarded by our educational institutions and the new technology businesses talking about how important it is to have the kind of education that will prepare our young people for the future. Having said that, tonight I'm going to talk about STEM, but I want you to know, as a representative of the South Bay area, that one of the things that I recognize so profoundly is that we are a South Bay community of retail and service and small businesses. And that's extremely important because when you take a look at who really creates jobs in this country, and after all we say and do about our large corporations and businesses, it is the proliferation of small businesses that really create the jobs in our communities. And even though I'm going to talk about STEM this evening, because I was asked to talk about what is being said and what is being done, what is being thought about in creation of jobs for the future, I want you to know that our service businesses and our small businesses are constantly on my mind. And when I talk about they may be giving our financial institutions a little bit of trouble, it is because I want investment. I want investment in our businesses. And I think we have a right to ask for it. We have bailed out the too big to fail institutions, financial institutions in this country, to the tune of $750 billion. And we had to do that. It was very necessary to keep our financial institutions floating and working after the subprime meltdown took place and what took place on Wall Street. But we really are expecting our banks and our financial institutions to recognize the need and the needs of our small businesses for loans and investment, for inventory and expansion, and the development of new technology that will help to make our business successful. So while I'm going to be very nice to Wells Fargo tonight, they get the message that I send constantly and all of our financial institutions. And I hope, serving as a ranking member on the Financial Institutions Committee of Congress, that they understand that my push and my encouragement and my leveraging is going to be about investment in our communities in our cities and in our towns and in our small businesses so that we can create jobs and strengthen the economies of our cities and our towns. So take that message back. Thank you very, very much. So let me talk about STEM. Recent studies and reports indicate that America is falling behind in graduating engineers, computer scientists, and tech professionals. Therefore, we need to promote more public and private partnerships, federal policies, civic and investment activities to strengthen our nation's STEM pipeline and ensure that the United States continues to produce highly skilled STEM professionals that are both diverse and innovative. STEM jobs are paying quite a bit of money in comparison to some of the other jobs in our economy. STEM jobs are important to the economy and to our nation's future. Part of the reason they pay so well is because they do create additional jobs through promoting innovation in various sectors, leading to overall economic growth. While improvements in STEM education will take time to yield results, efforts to increase our national supply of qualified and diverse tech professionals now can be enhanced by training those individuals who are already skilled in computer science and engineering proficiencies. Applied training provided by corporate and academic sponsors, complemented by a community of mentors, could transition already talented workers into STEM professionals. The bulk of United States supply of highly skilled workers must come from education programs, which will require the early promotion of STEM disciplines to encourage study in these fields and ongoing public and private partnerships that promote STEM education, employment, and job training. The Obama administration recognizes the importance of STEM education, and this is why the President and Labor Secretary, Hilda Solis, announced last year nearly $500 million in grants to our community colleges around the country for targeted training and workforce development to help economically dislocated workers who are changing careers. The grants support partnerships between community colleges and employers to develop programs that provide pathways to good jobs, including instructional programs that prepare job candidates for new careers in high-wage, high-skill fields, including advanced manufacturing, transportation, healthcare, and STEM occupations. These grants are part of the Trade Adjustment Assistance Community College and Career Training Initiative, for which the Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act included a total of $2 billion over a 4-year period. These investments will help individuals to receive the skills they need to work in high-demand sectors and provide additional pathways to work for the unemployed. The United States Department of Labor is implementing and administering the program in coordination with the U.S. Department of Education. If you're now wondering about what you've been hearing about, the fiscal cliff, and the fact that this country is about to fall off the fiscal cliff, and how this is going to impact these types of federal programs, the short answer is, right now, I do not know. We're about to go back into a lame duck session where we've got to deal with this. If not, we truly will fall off the fiscal cliff. It will ultimately depend on the agreement that the Obama administration reaches with Congress. Once again, divided by a democratically controlled Senate and a Republican House majority. We're still divided. You heard the president talk about his willingness to outreach and how he wanted to meet with Romney and how he wants to meet with Boehner, who is still the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He has to do this. This is so important because if we fall off the fiscal cliff, everybody is going to be harmed, and we're going to feel this in our cities. The fiscal cliff refers to a series of budget and tax changes that are going to become effective on January 1st, 2013. What are some of these changes? First of all, employers, you'll recognize The 2% payroll tax cut for workers is going to expire. This tax cut, which has been in effect for the last 2 years, will cut workers' payroll taxes from 6.2% down to 4.2%, impacting 160 million Americans and providing about $1,000 worth of additional income per family. The fiscal cliff also includes the end of the Bush tax cuts from 2001 and 2003. You'll remember that President Obama extended all of the Bush tax cuts at the end of 2010 for 2 years in exchange for getting an extension in long-term unemployment benefits, as well as some of the other measures. Well, these tax cuts will again expire on December 31st of this year. Moreover, as I'm sure you all know, the coming year will also mark an end to the extension of emergency unemployment benefits to the long-term unemployed. Finally, the so-called fiscal cliff includes the Budget Control Act. You may remember that back in August of last year, the Congress reached a standoff as the nation approached the debt ceiling. Typically, extension of the debt ceiling was a routine nonpartisan vote. Let me just back you up. We had to negotiate raising the debt ceiling when we reach that ceiling, and we need to overturn the agreement that we had about how much debt we would have. When we reach that ceiling, routinely, we will raise it so that we can pay bills, and we can keep the government going, and we can keep people employed. This last negotiation that we had was so tough, and it was so rough, that some of the new members who came in 2010 said, we don't care. Let the government fail. We don't care about whether or not people are going to lose their jobs, or we don't pay the bills of the debt that we have already incurred. So our backs were up against the wall. And in order to raise the debt ceiling, we agreed to sequestration, this point of having where we're going to have to cut government across the board significantly. For city managers, that means CDBG. It means all of these programs are going to be cut significantly, which is going to have a great impact. And as you know, some of what was referred to this evening about earmarks, all that's off the table, that's gone. And so what I don't like is the fact that our small cities having to compete with the overall budget of the United States of America to try and get resources. We know that you get lost in that situation. And so earmarks was so important because we had the opportunity as representatives to get in there and make requests for our cities and support our police department and other agencies of our local government without having to go through all of that competition with the overall federal budget. And so with earmarks being off the table and with these cuts that are identified because of the negotiation and the agreements that we have to make, we've got to, in this lame duck session, get together across the aisle. We've got to reach some agreements. If not, we're going to fall off the fiscal cliff. We in Congress could typically have disputes over policy choices, but no one ever disputed whether or not we needed to pay the bills we've already incurred. But some want to use this issue as an opportunity to make drastic cuts to programs even though the economy was still in a fragile position. That's all about these negotiations that we were doing to raise the debt ceiling. So in exchange, again, for raising the debt ceiling, the Budget Control Act established this super committee composed of members of both parties from both the House and the Senate who were tasked with coming up with $1.5 trillion in agreed cuts. Now, I opposed the super committee on the grounds that it was secretive and that its 12 members could not possibly represent the views of all Americans, and I introduced legislation to repeal it. Though my legislation was not adopted, the super committee ultimately failed to come to an agreement. Because of this stalemate, provisions in the Budget Control Act may kick in January, that is January 1, 2013, if Congress cannot come to another agreement in the meanwhile. Specifically, if Congress does not adopt new measures starting in 2013, we will see $1.2 trillion in automatic across-the-board cuts spread over 10 years. This is commonly known as the sequester. While half of these cuts will be targeted at the defense budget, the other half will fall squarely on the domestic programs that you and I care about. Because Medicaid, we're going to try and protect Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare. And we're going to try and see that they are truly exempted from these cuts. The brunt of the spending reductions will hit the domestic discretionary programs like housing assistance, education, research, development, and health programs. Of course, Department of Labor programs also will suffer. If the sequester goes into effect, workforce investment, adult state grants will be cut. Right here, about $60 million, or 8% of the current total budget of $770 million across the nation. This means about 349,000 fewer people will be able to access quality employment and training services. California, it means at least 50 or 60,000 fewer individuals would be served. The same is true for the WIA dislocated worker state grants. Funding would be cut again at about 8% of the total $1 billion in funding, which amounts to a reduction of about over $100 million. This means about 46,000 fewer individuals would be served, and about 10,000 fewer would not be served in California. In conclusion, the message that I really want to leave with you today is that it's important for you to explain the impacts of these cuts to lawmakers in Washington. Since we ultimately decide on funding for the Department of Labor, which allocates grants under the Workforce Investment Act and other programs, the potential cuts in the sequester could be devastating and impact many of our local priorities. And because of your partnerships with local leaders in the private sector, your voice is crucial. I want you to know that, of course, I'm your partner in the federal government, and I will fight so that you continue to get the kind of assistance that I would like to provide. And I thank you so much for inviting me to speak, and again, to Chairman Hill and Police Medrano. I thank you for your work and your leadership. In the final analysis, let me say this. The members of Congress must be responsible, we must set priorities, and we must be aware that our taxpayers expect us not only to set priorities, but to use taxpayer money wisely and not to throw it away. And I believe in setting priorities, but I also believe that our government should work in ways that provide assistance to our cities and to our towns and have programs that invest in human potential. And so, when I talk to you about making sure that you're contacting all of the members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, I'm really talking about saving Social Security as we know it. Before Social Security, many of our seniors worked all their lives and ended up in poverty. Saving Medicare so that our seniors can have access to quality health care. Supporting Medicaid so that the very least of these have an opportunity to at least be able to be serviced in our emergency care rooms. I'm talking about making education our #1 priority. I'm talking about making sure that our first responders, our police, and our firemen are supported in ways that not only can they provide the security for our communities and our citizens, but so that they'll be there and ready and equipped in terms of disasters. We have unprecedented disasters in this country, and I don't care what people argue about what's causing them. When you take a look at what is happening with Hurricane Sandy right now, what happened with Katrina in New Orleans, what have you, for our first responders to be able to communicate with each other, they must have the proper equipment. They must have the training. They must have all that it takes to be able to respond to disasters. I believe that we can take care of all of this in this country. And I think that we can do it responsibly. And so, what I'm saying is this. We as elected officials have a responsibility now to really work harder at working together in a greater way than we've ever had before to keep from falling off this fiscal cliff. If we fall off this fiscal cliff, we're not going to improve this economy. We're not going to have the kind of economic development that I think we can do if we reach certain kinds of agreements and we want to invest in job creation working with the private sector. And so, even though our work is going to be very difficult, I have all of my cities in mind when I go back to Washington, D.C. I think about Gardena. I think about our city manager who has held this city in good stead and who has made sure that we got rid of our deficit and we were working in ways that would keep this city sound and well cared for. I'm thinking about all of the diversity in all of our communities and the desire for people to work and to own businesses and to have contracts and to have a decent quality of life. And I truly believe that this is a country that can do all of this. And so I welcome the opportunity to represent. They didn't have to make it more difficult for me by having me to do all of this campaigning in this last election. But that's okay. Had to do it. It's done. I'm ready to go to work. I believe in you, and even though there are many evenings when I go to bed and I am complaining about what I was not able to get done, how people don't see things correctly, and how people are not concerned about the least of these. When I have a good night's sleep and I wake up the next morning, I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to do the business of the people who sent me there to serve. Thank you very much.